Imagine the time, Zaaki bolting away with the Hollandale 2 starts ago, and more impressive in the Doomben Cup. And if he goes to the Q22, which we think he probably will, over $1 million worth in a few weeks' time at Eagle Farm, he's going to, dominate the market for that. You don't need me to tell you. But his record is 25 starts, 6 wins, 9 placings, and he's a 6-year-old. But let's go back and find out how this horse went from Sir Michael Stout's stable into the stables of Annabelle Neasham. Enter this gentleman we're going to talk to in the UK. His name is Stuart Boman, and he works for a company called Blandford Bloodstock. Stu's dad was a very well-known journalist in Australia, Ken Boman. But Stu's joining us. Good evening.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for having me on. How are you?
Good. Where were you watching the Doomben Cup from, Stu?
From my living room at home. Yeah, it's quite early in the morning. It was about 6 a.m. or 25 6 in the morning. So it was an exciting and easy watch, as Annabelle said. So couldn't quite believe the ease of the performance. I suppose it was made a little bit better by a few of the favoured horses not running their race, but I suppose the authority of the win, he probably would have won regardless.
I agree, yes. Dragona's got an issue, Mugger too, Avilia's bled. I agree, take all that on board, but then you look at the time, don't you? And much faster than, of course, the fillies ran, a couple of seconds in the Roses.
Yeah, look at it. Yeah, he's just dominant. He bossed the race, and he's quite an aggressive horse by nature, and it's quite interesting to hear the comments of James McDonald, sort of saying that he almost draws confidence by being on top in the race. And he was ridden in a very different style up here. He's always ridden very quietly back in the field, always travelled very strongly in his races, and would invariably have a good turn of foot. But often he was running in races that were quite slowly run, so he was in a position where he couldn't really get in amongst it too early in the race. So, look, he was a very well performed horse up here. He was a dual Group 3 winner and a listed winner, highly rated horse, and well regarded by everyone really. Everyone knew he was a good horse. But I suppose people had seen him as his best days had maybe gone or maybe passed. But it's nice to see him get the opportunity to shine in Australia and to really get circumstances that really seem to suit him, obviously.
Yeah, Stu, I pointed out a run last week at 2000 at Newmarket behind Communique, who ended up being a really good horse and placed in a Group 1. He should have won that particular day. Any reason why his form may have just tapered off before he left the country?
Yeah, look, it was a funny year last year, obviously. Racing only kicked off here, towards June. So, it was an unusual, truncated season. There were good runs against good fields and good horses. He's still running consistently to 110, which is the equivalent of Group 3 level, if not a little bit better, in defeat. And there were runs with excuses. I was happy to forgive, sort of what were slightly disappointing runs on paper, but there were good performances. His last run at Sandown, was probably the most disappointing of them all. That's the run before the sale that we purchased in the Battersea sale in Newmarket. And that day he was ridden by Ryan Moore. And Ryan's an exceptional jockey. He knows his horses well, knows this horse particularly well. And when he's beaten on a good horse, he doesn't beat them up unnecessarily. He really did stand up on the horse and let him come home in his own steam in the last furlong. And when I see that from him or Frankie or some of the other senior riders, I just put a line through it. I forget that they go around. If it was properly ridden out that day, he would have finished much closer.
So Stu, take us through that day you just referred to in question and how Zaaki ended up in the stables of Annabelle Neasham.
Yeah, so he was catalogued for the Tattersalls Autumn Horses in Training Sale, which is held in Newmarket at the end of October. It's traditionally sort of the clear-out sale for trainers here in the UK. So all the new yearlings are coming in or have already started, already in the yard, and these are the horses they need to move on to make room. So traditionally it was probably always seen as a pretty, sort of workman-like sale. Nothing too exciting about it at all. But Chris Waller came up here probably the best part of 10, maybe even 12 years ago, and has really made it quite fashionable. Really, it was always a sale that attracted a bit of international attention. It's almost like a meeting of the UN. You have 40 odd nations represented. The horses go to every country in the world pretty much that race out of that sale. But anyway, so he ended up in the Tats Autumn Horse and Training Sale, about 1,600 horses in the catalogue. Catalogue came out, and he was the one I wanted. Has been wanting to buy this horse for quite a while, and like a lot of other agents, I've identified him as being a very talented horse. But I still had a lot of faith in him. So Annabelle came to me when she got a license, saying that she wanted to buy some European horses. I'd worked closely with Annabelle when she was at Kieran Mars, and we built up a good working relationship. And so we landed on this sale, and we went through our usual process and considered a lot of different horses. There's a lot goes into the research behind buying horses in this sale in particular. It's not an easy sale to work. Horses are running right up until the day they sell. There's a lot of withdrawals often. It's not an easy sale, but look, we landed on him. I saw him probably 2 days before he was to sell. Absolutely loved him physically. He's a real Aussie type of horse. He's a muscular horse. Good bone and real presence to him. He vetted very cleanly. I use a vet here primarily in Newmarket called Pete Ramsden, who's also an expat Aussie. He's very familiar with the circumstances, what he's going to face in Australia. A lot of confidence and good working rapport with him. So it's a team, there's a real team around this. And we work hard at it. So, it was personally gratifying and exciting to have been able the opportunity to buy him and then to see what he's done. Everyone's very excited about it up here. Everyone's, he's had obviously a lot of media attention in Australia, but that's really filtered out, around the world. I've had a lot of congratulatory messages and people getting in touch over the last couple of days. So it's been fantastic.
Yeah. Stuart, how high were you willing to go? Because we understand the price converted to our money was about $275,000.
Yes, so they're selling guineas at Tattersalls, which is £1 and 5 pence, and the 5 pence is the commission of the auction house. And it does work from the perspective of when you're bidding, you kind of feel like you're bidding in pounds. You kind of forget about the guinea sometimes. So it's only really used in some traditional auction house settings. I think Tattersalls is probably one of the last ones. So his price, when I went into the ring to purchase, to try and buy him, it was evident, the auctioneer was asking for quite a high opening bid, which is an indication that there's a high reserve. I think he was asking for sort of a 200 or 250,000 opening bid. It quickly, was evident that there was, the horse was being, supported by the vendor, run up in the ring. He was passed in at around 200, I think it was, I think it was about 200,000 guineas. So quickly, I didn't actually bid in the ring because it was evident that the vendor was bidding. I found Sir Michael's assistant trainer and quickly found the owner's representatives and negotiated a purchase of 150,000 guineas, so which converts to about 275,000 Australian dollars. So we probably had a little bit more for him. We were very happy to get him for what we did. Look, it's a good amount of money for a 5-year-old gelding that arrives in Australia as a 6-year-old and is going to be 7 soon enough. I had a lot of luck buying older horses. I do feel that they represent some decent value. And I hope they still do, because I hope everyone else might start doing the same. But these tough, older, sound horses, he'd already travelled. He'd already been to Hong Kong and competed well, and he'd been to a lot of different race days over many years, and generally showed up and performed. So that's sort of how it came about at Tattersalls. We're delighted to get him. I was super excited to get him on the day, and I'm just so happy that it's worked out for Annabelle and her ownership group, and it's been a phenomenal result, and Annabelle's done an incredible job.
Yeah, so tell us, when that particular day you negotiated the sale price you mentioned, we said about 275 Australian. So then when was contact made with Annabelle? Obviously shortly after the sale or the following day, was it?
Oh, yeah. No, she was on the phone when we were in the ring. So
okay, yeah.
It was late in the evening. Depends on where they are in the sale, but it was late in the evening. She was up training the horses. It would have been, 3 or 4 in the morning with her. She was on the phone. I said quickly, there's something up here. They must have a very high reserve. And then I said, look, he's been passed in. And she said, all right, we'll get onto it. And I said, well, offer. Where should I start? So offer 150. And I negotiated quickly, and the owner's representatives were trying to make the indication that there were some live bids, but it was obvious that no one had bid in the ring, and so it was good. Got in first. I'm sure there was plenty of other people interested, and probably would have wanted to buy him at that level, but we really wanted him, and we got in there, and were aggressive to negotiate privately.
And Stu, then the process of getting him to Australia, how complicated was that during a COVID situation?
Yeah, look, he travelled down with IRT. Early days, there was difficulties with regards to the grooms. The horses themselves are fine. It's just the grooms and and the flight crew and those sorts of things. But the biggest issue they've had is a lack of cargo, or not a lack, the minimum amount of availability on cargo flights. So IRT and the other shipping companies have done a great job to try and keep the show on the road as such. So the usual quarantine and shipping arrangements for the horse in training sale went ahead as per normal. Post purchasing, and he went back to Harry Eustace, David Eustace's brother, who's just started training in Newmarket, just taken over from his father James, and he was kept in light work from buying him until the quarantine started. I think he was there about 3.5, 4 weeks. And I think Harry's quite. Harry had Sir Dragonet for Kieran in between the same sort of time before he got on the plane to go to Australia. So I think Harry's quite excited about the idea of maybe having 2 Cox Plate winners in a row. So.
Absolutely. Well, he's one of the favourites even at this early stage with Very Elegant. So just did Annabelle stay in contact with you? And when he arrived, did she ring you and say, well, he looks fantastic? Or was there a constant contact?
Yeah, kept in touch, very regular contact. I've watched all these trials and followed him very closely. Got a few other horses with Annabelle for other clients. There was another horse from Europe went down on the same shipment. So we're in regular touch. Look, he's extraordinarily busy. But yeah, I've been following the horse's progress closely, and for me, that's probably one of the most enjoyable parts. This is a horse I had a lot of faith in, and it's been an amazing ride, and it's been very quick. You do find that with the better ones, they do hit the ground running. Generally, they either take to the Australian circumstances, or they often struggle a bit. It's very different training regime and very different tracks and services, and there's a lot more to cope with. Training on a race course versus training on Newmarket Heath is an extraordinarily different experience for these horses, and some take to it and some don't. So.
Yeah. Well, Stu, they can't take it away from you. Any regrets there that you should have maintained a little bit of the ownership at all?
I did have that conversation with my wife. It's a bit of an occupational hazard in that I buy a lot of horses every year, so it's hard to take a share in each one of them. But this was a horse that I was so confident about, and in reflection, I should have obviously. Look, I'm just delighted for the group of owners that are in the horse, and there's a good ownership group. There's a couple of clients that have built up a bit of rapport over time, and hopefully it leads to future business. And it's ultimately it's great to enjoy their success, and that's what I do. That's my job.
Anything is now, Stuart. They're all going to think you're going to be finding another Zaaki every sale, and it's pressure.
I did say to Annabelle the other day, we set ourselves a very high standard. But look, that's where I was chatting to a mate of mine in Australia. I'm working Magic Millions National Sale with a fellow agent, Andy Williams, and he was having a chat about it this morning, and we're talking about it. And I said, mate, all right, on to the next. We've got to find the next one. That's what it's like. It's a constant process. We're off to the Breeze Up sales in Doncaster, I leave early tomorrow morning, and there's another sale in Newmarket next week. So we're constantly looking for the next one, and that's again why we do it. That's the enjoyment of it. So,
Stuart, just something that someone did ask me on the weekend after his performance. Did I know anything about the sire? My answer was absolutely no. Can you tell me a bit about this sire? I can't even say the horse's name. Zaaki.
Luro de Sonimo is the sire. He's a interesting stallion. He's the sire of Animal Kingdom, who was the Kentucky Derby winner and Dubai World Cup winner, who stood in Australia for a few years. He's interesting sire line, Brazilian breds, so by a stallion called Candy Stripes. It is seen as a complete outcross sire line. It's very different. Kirsten Rousing, the owner and owner-operator of Landwade Stud here in Newmarket, breds Zaaki and also Stuart Boman. She's known for bringing stallions to Newmarket and stallions in Newmarket that are probably less commercial, and not some of the sexy sire lines or those sorts of things. And she's taken great pleasure out of this win in particular, and has followed his progress in Australia very closely. And it's a real sign of the standing of Australian racing and the general level of interest Australian racing is generating globally. Whereas, say 10 or 15 years ago, a similar performance or a similar win wouldn't have had as much interest, and it's been a pretty quick change over the time. The Australian industry, with only the strength of the bloodstock industry, but the quality of the racing, and I suppose the amount of European horses that are now racing there, and the amount of European expats that are the participants, it's just growing in further standing and further levels of interest. So.
Thanks for staying up quite late for us. Fascinating story.
No problems at all. Anytime, Steve. Look, I hope I didn't rabbit on too long.
It was very interesting.
We look forward to his next race, whenever that may be.
Yeah, probably that race called the Q22 in a couple of weeks, worth over $1 million Australian. So, his odds very short price favourite, and that seems to be the way. Annabelle said he's thriving. So, fingers crossed he lines up in that. Thank you.
All of that.
Stuart Boman joining us from the UK, the guy that picked that horse and liked him and encouraged Annabelle Nishan to buy from Blandford Bloodstock. Yeah.